I would like to pick up where Mr. Steffen ended his speech. I think you said that you hope that Taiwan can learn from Germany's experience in the way that Germany used to treat its so-called Gastarbeiter or guest workers. So for the longest time, there was this illusion in Germany that you have these people who only come temporarily to work here, and you don't really need to give them any long-term perspective because they will leave anyway soon. And you also do not need to spend too much effort integrating them into society because they are only guest workers after all, and they will leave. And this, of course, turned out to be a very consequential mistake that German society is still suffering from, the outfall of this. And I'm sorry to say, but I think Taiwan is currently still repeating the same kind of mistakes that Germany did back then. Because Taiwan, as we heard in your talk, has actually, in practical terms, it is a caste system for different kinds of foreigners here. And you have like higher castes and lower class castes, and you treat them differently, and you give them different kinds of rights. And I would like to start with my own experience, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only migrant sitting on stage here. So I'm an immigrant to Taiwan. I belong to the so-called caste of white-collar foreign workers. And there's not so many of us. I think there's less than 100,000 in Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. And they probably tend to look a bit like me, and they also tend to do the kind of work that I do, which is mostly taking place in offices or well, on the computer anyway. So when I came here, I only had to stay in Taiwan with a working permit for 5 years, and after 5 years, I had the right to apply for a so-called alien permanent resident certificate, which means that I now, as long as I don't really screw up, I have the right to stay in Taiwan for as long as I want to, no matter if I have an employer, no matter if I'm married to a Taiwanese citizen or not. I have unlimited citizenship rights in Taiwan, which of course I was very happy about, but I am very much aware that this is a privilege that most foreigners in Taiwan are not being afforded. So let's look at the bigger group of foreigners, foreign labor in Taiwan, which is the caste of the so-called blue-collar workers. There is more than 800,000 of them, as you said, and just to put that into perspective, that is more than 3% of Taiwan's population. These people mostly come from countries in the region like Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, not from the so-called West. And the kind of work they do, there's the term of the 3D, which is dangerous, demeaning, and dirty. It's the kind of work the blue-collar workers are supposed to do. Work in the factories, work on building sites, and take care of the old people at home. Basically, the kind of work that the Taiwanese themselves don't want to do any longer. As I said, there's 800,000 of them, and I think the kind of work they do is actually more important in contributing to Taiwan's society than the kind of work I do. Well, these people, until recently, they had no pathway at all to an alien permanent residency like I do now. Then there was a reform, and I think to qualify, you don't only need to stay 5 years, but I think initially 5 years, and then the clock starts counting. So de facto, they need to be working in Taiwan for 10 or 11 years before they even have the chance to apply for the permanent residency. Now, even within that blue-collar case, there's still a system of two groups that are being treated differently, because the caregivers, or the people who who live in Taiwanese families' homes and take care of the senior citizens, or maybe of the children soon as well, they have even less protections than those blue-collar workers who work in factories. They, for example, are not covered by the Labor Standards Act, which means that they don't have a fixed minimum wage. In fact, they don't even have the rights for a certain number of days off. So, and this group, and here we talk about intersectional discrimination, this group, of course, are mostly women doing the work. Women from Southeast Asian countries that are poorer than Taiwan, having the least protection of all. And if we look at the way the Taiwanese society is aging, I think they are doing one of the most important kinds of work at all. So Taiwanese society has been shrinking since 2020. I hope you're all aware of that. And the demand for so-called skilled labor migration, as well as the so-called blue-collar labor migration, is only going to go up. I think 3 years ago, I found a quote by the head of the National Development Council. He said, in Taiwan's high-tech industry, only to keep our high-tech industry running until 2032, which is 7 years from now, we will need 400,000 skilled foreign labor immigrants. Right now, so we're talking about white collar here. Right now, I think the number I found is there's something around 30,000 in Taiwan. So good luck finding the other 300,000 in the next 7 years. And in the so-called blue-collar sector, I think the development will only be even more dramatic and the demand will even be larger. So one of the points that was really important for me to make in my book, which you also mentioned, was that Taiwan is shooting itself in the foot with this kind of immigration policies. It's weakening itself in the eyes of the world. We can also talk about how, for example, exports by Giant, the biggest bike producer, were just blocked entering the US because they say you're treating your foreign labor not well enough. It looks like there is forced labor going on there. If you want to, we can talk about the broker system and the fees and all that. I don't want to go into that now. So it makes Taiwan look bad in the eyes of the world. If the people from Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines are making negative impressions and they take it back home to their countries, these are all very important neighboring countries of Taiwan. They are all very influential in ASEAN. These 3 countries alone have larger population. Their population combined is more than 20 times as large as Taiwan's. So Taiwan would do very well to strengthen their relations with countries like this. And to sum it up, not all problems Taiwan is facing and not all problems that are endangering Taiwan's future can be blamed on China. This is a problem that Taiwan should really figure out by itself.
Thank you very much, and Mr. Baden-Hagen. Okay.
I think you're right with what you say, but if you have observed Taiwan's immigration policy over the last, I would say, 25 years, you would also see a lot of change. And I remember that back in the early 1990s, that was a real restrictive, very restrictive, even racist regime. Now, many of my scholars, my colleagues, they would still claim it racist to much extent and very restrictive. But, others, me included, would also have seen change and quite substantial change, also extending to Chinese marriage migration. So is the glass half full or is it half empty? And the last point here is, I fully agree, if Taiwan does not move with respect to liberalizing its immigration policy, it will lose out the regional competition for labor migration. Because we have the same problems in Japan, we have them in South Korea, we have them in mainland China, and we have them partly even in Southeast Asian countries. They need immigration, so there will be a huge competition in immigration here in East Asia, and if Taiwan keeps up with this kind of restrictive regime, it will lose out. Isn't that also a pressure that is felt here by the government? That's a question for you, because I don't know so that they discuss that kind of pressure and take it as, you know, a moment of liberalizing further the regime they have right now.
Yes, in the 16 years that I have been living in Taiwan as an immigrant, I have witnessed a number of reforms and improvements, but they have always been incremental, so little steps, almost as if the government was hesitant to really do any big steps, only just as much as you could sell the public without going into uncomfortable territory. So, for example, the whole system of white-collar foreigners, high-class white-collar foreigners, and very high-class white-collar foreigners, this was introduced in the last few years, but they did not give the improvements to everybody who might qualify. So, for example, dual citizenship is still being handled very restrictively in Taiwan. I could try to fit into one of these categories, and I would need to get a lot of documents and certificates, and maybe I would manage to get a Taiwanese citizenship without giving up my own. The thing is, even Germany, in terms of dual citizenship, is more liberalized than Taiwan now, and that says something. And in the blue-collar sector, as you said, the possibility to even have a pathway to permanent citizenship was also only introduced very recently. So is the glass half full or half empty? If Taiwan would have a lot of time, and if Taiwan would not be under the special situation and pressure it is, and if maybe we would talk about this 10 years ago, I would say the glass is half full, but we just had new demographic numbers coming out. In the next 10 years, I think 6 million people will exit the labor market. Taiwan this year has officially become a super-aged society with more than 20% of people over 65, and in 2040, I think, if not much changes, 40% of the population will be over 65. So I would say the time for careful, hesitant reforms is over, and I would say the glass is half empty.
Mm-hmm.